A very good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jarnail Singh, as you can see on that name tag. I work at the MacArthur Foundation, which is an international philanthropy. I work as a deputy director still, not a country director, although it's written in the agenda as a country director. So I just wanted to make that clarification here. I have got an extremely exciting title for the panel today. At the same time, an amazing set of panelists to speak to today, along with an incredibly important keynote speech. So maybe I could quickly introduce the panelists and our keynote speaker for the day, and then kick off the discussion. So I'll start with Dr. Ritu Mathur, who's the senior energy economist at NITI Aayog and has been working on the frontiers of energy economic modeling at NITI Aayog. Then we have Ms. Zeenat Niazi, who's the senior vice president and the chief knowledge officer at the Development Alternatives Group. We have Akshama Ghate, who's been a former colleague at TERI and now heading the Rocky Mountain Institute as a managing director in India. We also have Mr. Gagan Sidhu, who's leading the Center for Energy Finance at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. And last but not the least, I have Pramit Mukherjee, who's an associate fellow with ORF at the Center for Economy and Growth. I have the pleasure and privilege to announce, to invite Ms. Eenam Gambhir, who's a joint secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs, to deliver the keynote speech, and then we could kick off the discussions on the panel today. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jarnail, for giving me the floor. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to ORF for inviting me. I'm very, very happy to be here. Before I go further, let me give a standard disclaimer. Whatever I'll be saying should not be construed as MEA's or Government of India's policy. I will be expressing my views in my personal capacity. The topic of discussion today, the development imperative in the context of the Green Agenda, is indeed very urgent. Many experts, colleagues here today, yesterday, may have spoken about the challenges that the global development agenda is facing at this moment. COVID-19 came on the eve of a decade of action and has disrupted decades of developmental progress in the world on many fronts. The pandemic has resulted in the most damaging humanitarian and economic crisis since the Second World War, especially for the more vulnerable countries. Its ripple effects will be felt for some time to come. These effects are compounded by the knock-on effects of the ongoing conflict. The trust that is needed for multilateral actions which might address these challenges is only diminishing. The old-school models of measuring growth are being questioned. Environment, our flora, our fauna are under stress. The development agenda is moving backwards. In other words, the world is not in a good place. In this scenario, how do we talk about development imperative and ideas and actions needed for putting the SDG agenda back on track? Would we find some answers to these questions in the narrative emanating from India? These are some of the questions I would like to speak to you about today. Before we delve deeper into the India narrative, let's first take a look at the multilateral pact part of our global development and climate agenda, which was agreed in 2015 at the time of adoption of the 2030 agenda and the landmark Paris Agreement. One of the key planks of these two very big collective political commitments from our leaders was the interconnectedness of climate and development agendas. And as a colleague here just reminded me, this interconnectedness has been recognized even before. Even while the Sustainable Development Goals included climate action within themselves in an interconnected manner, the Paris Agreement reaffirmed the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, which, amongst other things, also set the stage for providing the means for supporting development in the developing world. 7 years on, the several parts of that multilateral pact stand weaker. One of the key reasons for this weakening of the pact emanates from some in international community ignoring the interconnectedness and indivisibility of these two agendas. It is clear that the development agenda was lagging behind even before the pandemic hit us. I invite you to consider that one of the primary causes for this could be the forgetting that the international climate and development agendas go hand in hand and complement each other to the extent that one cannot exist without another. I like to call it the theory of everything, the need to develop an approach which addresses both the development and climate agendas together, just like they coexist on the ground for our people, for our policymakers, and our economies. Just like in physics, here as well, we need to imagine our actions on these two agendas together, attach similar level of urgency to both, provide similar resources and support, and find ways to harness their complementarities. Let me now speak about the India narrative, its inclusive approaches, and India's success story, which I believe may provide some guidance on the challenge, the global challenge that we just outlined. Speaking of India's narrative, I would like to speak of three big transformative ideas and visionary approaches, the underlying philosophies that have come out of Prime Minister Modi's vision and in the Indian thought in the last couple of years. First, the concept of life, lifestyle for environment. Second, the success story of our digital innovation, especially our contribution in creating the digital public goods. Third, our vision for a reformed multilateral system. Let me explain. Life as an individual action-driven mass movement for environment sets us for a paradigm shift in not only our individual lifestyle, but also our relationship with nature and the earth that we live in. It is fundamentally rooted in the interconnected nature of the earth. It is only with this approach can we actually tackle climate change and address development agendas together. Coming to the second important idea, and India's success story in digital innovation and its contribution to creation of digital public goods, I believe this has proven that innovative collaborations and partnerships amongst all stakeholders with the aim of providing public goods to our people has multiplier effect on the innovation ecosystem and the well-being of our societies. This approach has reimagined as a model of partnership itself. Thirdly, our vision for reform multilateralism, which is especially important in today's context. I believe it provides us a holistic and honest lens for looking at what really needs to change in our old ways of doing things and in the international governance institutions. It is also interesting to see and ask why some of these transformative ideas like life originated from India. As Prime Minister Modi likes to say, this is possibly because Indian civilization has always been living in harmony with nature and therefore has always remained rooted. It is from this rooted perspective that we must take these approaches, these ideas, and apply them on scale to the global challenges that the world faces. Looked at from this perspective of holistic actions, we would change the single-use culture itself and not just find biodegradable alternatives for plastic. We will not only speak of net zero goals from individual countries' perspectives, but also a global net zero for the Earth, wherein the developed countries would have to vacate the carbon space earlier so that it can be used by developing countries for their own development. We will be working to finding the mobility solutions and not just turning our cars and vehicles into hybrid models. Similarly, we would not only look at improving countries' national abilities in mobilizing financing, but also we would look at how the international development finance institutions can leverage their ability for de-risking and making financing more accessible and affordable for countries. We would look at SDG agenda holistically. We would not ignore SDGs. We would work on SDGs that have been forgotten, such as SDG 12, which speaks of lowering consumption. As you continue these discussions on these crucial issues, I suggest you take this thread forward. India has outlined its belief in the interconnectedness of climate and development agendas since forever. I firmly believe that our future collective actions, including at G20, should be inspired by this India narrative through ideas of changing our old habits, even reforming the international governance structures when necessary, creating a people's movement for the earth in the spirit of innovative collaborative partnerships. Here's to more action. Thank you.